let's carry on as if sound issues are better,
Yeah,
and then
let's pretend everything's
so
fine, just like we are in life right now.
yes, exactly. Just everybody's just pretending anyway. Before this happened,
Yeah,
we're
let's
all
just be English
pretenders,
about this and keep calm.
Yeah, exactly. Let's join in the grey dance. So there's a thing I'm interested in, and I think there's some parallels with the cabaret work, and I'm interested in talking to you because I do see you as, even in doing your cabaret work, you have more of a creative content in what you're doing than you would see in most street shows. You've got unique costumes, you've got a narrative usually being told in some way, even if it's just through the aesthetic, through something. And a lot of other shows, you'll see street shows and things like that, will go out there and just do hack and just think, oh, practically need to make something that functions with this.
Yeah.
So the way I saw the interview beginning going was that this would be interesting just to show someone who has a complete creative beginning. I have a concept of this, then I reach this. But it seems even more interesting now that you yourself have this compartmentalized creative thing where you have to serve a need in the cabaret world, and then you do more intrinsic to yourself artistic stuff in the gallery.
Yeah, I mean, I feel very lucky that at the moment there is still the popularity with the kind of freak stuff that I do, there's still space for me to make that kind of weird and wonderful work and it get booked, I speak to some people who kind of come from more like a trad burlesque kind of background, and they kind of say, like the trad burlesque bubble, like the wave kind of already hit and went a while ago. So I feel quite lucky that there are enough kind of nightclubs with the wealthy clientele to kind of back up enough bookings for me to keep being able to do this.
Yes, and I suppose that's also, I completely conjecture here, but I guess having more creative work than what was trad, trad burlesque is great, but then there is a hackishness to trad burlesque, just there
I
is.
think
So if you do it,
fantastic trad performers out there, but yeah, it's a different skill set.
Yeah, but I'm just seeing it as relating it with street shows, and you see street shows, what they have is they have this standard kind of, well, not every street show does, but what a great majority of street shows do is they have the standard set of tools, be it your straight jacket, your unicycle, things that are fairly quick to learn, which look reasonably impressive compared to the workload put in.
Yeah.
So you got with that with traditional burlesque, I assume you'd have things like you'd have fire feathers and things like that, which would be things that look difficult, look dangerous, but on either. And so with these set things in street shows, you only seem to get nowadays these set functional shows which hit all the points as they need to. And I just, just not knowing at all, because I haven't looked at a lot of traditional burlesque, but I suppose maybe that could have happened in another industry that had similar traits in it.
Yeah, I think it's quite common for a client or a booking to kind of be like, okay, what are your three skill sets? We need a girl who's got three, we're looking for girls who are, size 8 to 10, this height, who can fit into these costumes and have these three skill sets. So I appreciate how a lot of performers end up in this kind of niche of kind of filling a skill set and working with that, because that is, it's a good way, if you can have your show bag of tricks and turn up and be like, okay, which bikini do you want me in? Which, I've got these 3 fire things and I can do stilts and whatever else. Like,
really sorry to interrupt. Can I ask you a favour, mate? Did you share on? Now we restarted the video. You might need to do another share party for your people. It's not. It's my bad. It's my bad.
Okay.
So that's an interesting thing to think about as an organizer, as a booker.
Yeah.
It is kind of, if they understand the slots they want to fill, the pegs, the shaped pegs, and you have a show which is that shaped peg, maybe it's easier for people to do that. I don't know.
I see a lot of girls who seem to do very well with that kind of showgirl, sideshow kind of multi-skill setup, and that's great for them. And it does seem to be quite a successful way of kind of running yourself as a performer. I think I just shared that. Yeah,
cool. So I come back to this thing again about creative process.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you didn't do the same kind of hack everyone else was doing, and I'll call it just hack, just relating it to, you know, the world discussion that I'm having at the moment in my industry about the way things happen. You didn't do the same things as everyone else. Why do you think that? Why do you think you did something which was slightly different? And, you know,
I think that, like, from what I see from like people working within my kind of niche, I feel like you end up with kind of in roughly kind of three different. I think it's three kind of different people coming at it from three different angles really. You kind of have people who've come at it from a circus angle, who have gone, okay, I'm really interested in learning this skill, and they've got really excited about a skill, whether that's contortion, fire, whatever, and then at some point they've either combined that with interesting costuming or drag or whatever, or at some point they've kind of thought, how can I develop this more from just the presentation of the skill into something that's a bit more narrative based or conceptually based. And then you've got girls who might have come from like strip backgrounds, who are incredibly talented and they're amazing dancers, and they've got a really great like skill at hustling, and they've thought, how can I, then they've come to cabaret spaces and they're like, oh, I suddenly have a space where I can do this in a different way, and I can be perhaps more creative, and I've got more control over what I can do on stage within that 5 minutes or whatever. So, and then I feel like there's also the other girls who kind of might have maybe come from a more art space and then combined that with some of the other kind of skill bases. And so you've got, girls who were strippers who went to St. Martin's. I wasn't stripping at St. Martin's, but, there is a kind of...
Was that the undergrad?
No, I was running fetish clubs.
Fair enough.
Yeah, well, have we all got to make some buck, right?
yeah, and what an interesting way to make a living. It's definitely something you can dine out on with stories alone.
Yeah, I hope so.
So it's an interesting thing. I think once again, I'll keep trying to get to this thing of, so maybe it's the fine art background, maybe it's this process of spending time going and repeating methods of expressing yourself, thinking what you want to say, having a communication built within your stuff that's then bled out into this other industry you work in.
I think for me, part of it is like starting from a playful place. If people start from a place that's kind of playful, and then before they kind of monetize it, then you can kind of, if you're lucky, you can keep that kind of creativity and playfulness. And for me, I'm very much like, I create new characters and costumes by going out clubbing. I am a club kid. I've come from that background of dress up being very important to me. So for me to create a character for a club night is really like, it's fun and easy and exciting for me. I remember being really surprised when I had a chat with, because it's the thing, you kind of forget that some things are a skill that you've got, and you think, oh, well, everyone can just do this. And I remember sat there with a girl and we were meant to bring kind of 3 characters for a photo shoot, and she was like, oh, well, I brought this, and this, and I couldn't think of another one. And I was like, well, I've got this and this and this, and I was like, I hadn't realized that being able to just kind of create a character and a costume and adjust costumes and mix and match like that, I hadn't realized that was kind of something that didn't come as naturally to other people, I guess.
Or it wasn't a skill that they developed through their life. I mean, nature, nurture, this whole thing of are there certain things that have made you focus on doing certain behaviors which have then had transferable skills into different fields,
Yeah, definitely.
It's a really, really interesting conversation. Interesting conversation that's difficult to go further on, What more would you say about that?
Well, I think it's that thing of kind of like making things that are creative whilst also trying to kind of fit into a marketable niche. And it's that balance between kind of doing things that are yours and your own, but then doing things that are kind of fitting within spaces that they will actually get booked in, because it's also that financial thing of kind of like, how much money do you invest in an act, how many times are you going to be able to perform that act, etc. So
and how do you find your balance when you're looking at creating a work and you're trying to develop a piece of work and you have to think, well, I have to get people to pay for this. You don't just have to get someone to pay for it because it's logically worth it. You have to get someone who will like you enough to pay for it. You'd have to do those kind of. Can you let us into the world of that a little bit?
Yeah. I think for me, it's kind of like it can be in two different ways. Like either, okay, if I make this costume, then it won't cost a lot to make, and I know that I can wear it for this go-go dancing residency. I can wear that, so I can now wear that for the next couple of years there, and maybe they'll book it lots, and maybe they won't. But you know that you're going to get paid at least X to wear it. Are we going to pick up questions? Ian's asking about what I do. Should we go back to that quickly?
Yeah, we can do.
Okay, yeah, so you missed the beginning of our little talk, and who's joining us later on. I work in cabaret, mainly nightclubs. I specialize in surreal, heavily costumed, quite extreme cabaret, and I also do performance art, working with body ritual and pushing my body quite. So I've got these two kind of separate practices. I hope that catches you up a bit. Where did we get to, Matt?
And so I think we've talked a little bit about the kind of parallels between the different things, about creativity. It's a difficult one in the format because I'm so used to now doing all these interviews and just talking to old people who've worked on street pictures. So it's formed into this very easy way to chat about things, just chat about people you know about.
Okay.
And we kind of do story swapping and story sharing.
Well, that's nice.
It is, but I think people are interested anyway. Do you have any stories you could tell that wouldn't be betraying a trust, that are quite, you're sitting at a bar, you want someone to buy you a drink, you tell them this story because it's an interesting story, and they'll buy you a drink because they want to keep hearing the story. What's the story?
Well, I guess the story that I tell people, especially people in other countries who I'm like, so I do this performance stuff. I'm like, so I do hook suspensions, and they're like, what? What are hook suspensions? How do you do that? And then trying to explain to some drunk Italian stranger who's only got partial English that you can hang from meat hooks from your back is always an interesting thing to explain to people.
And if I'm correct in thinking this, people do it for cathartic reasons. People do it because they believe it makes them feel nice. Some people.
Well, yeah, I mean, catharsis is I guess one word, but people just enjoy it, and it's a ritual that people get drawn to. Some people it's ritualistic, some people it's artistic, some people it's more like going on roller coasters. So for people,
I had a friend who described it as. Oh, sorry, carry on.
For people who don't know how it works, this is an example. I don't know if you can see on my skin here these two dots. So from here to here, that's an example of how deep the skin is, the hook is when you're doing a hook suspension. There's the answer to the question you were going to ask.
And so how many points do you go off when you've got something that's deep? How much flesh is holding you up?
Well, I do two. I personally like two from my upper back. That's my comfy place. But you can go off one. I've suspended a friend off one hook before.
I take you go deeper, and there's a much greater amount of humanity in the hook.
You can go deeper. If you went deeper, you'd be in a different part of the skin. It's your skin is just really strong.
I could believe that.
But for me, doing two is more about being even than about. It's also nice to have a backup hook.
Yeah. And so I had a friend who did this and, emphatically tried to get me to do it. And he said one of the things he enjoyed about it is that for 5 days, you'd feel different. You'd have almost a high from it. You would have a different sense of self for 5 days after.
I don't know if I've had that for 5 days, but I definitely kind of felt pretty... Ironically, the last hook suspension I did was the last the second to last performance I did before the apocalypse. So I'm sorry, guys. I unleashed the apocalypse with my blood-stained hook suspension ritual for Antichrist.
Well, maybe you weren't the only one. Maybe it was a joint effort around the world for suspension artists.
Yeah.
Do you find it difficult to find places that will allow you to do that? I mean, I've had people, I juggle a bloody GIMP chainsaw, and I've had people in venues going mad just for using a GIMP chainsaw in a venue.
Yeah.
Let alone something that has so much viscera involved in it, you know.
Yeah, I totally appreciate where you're coming from. You've got your own kind of like, you've got your own group of kind of support space for performers. And I started this year the Extreme Performance Association for similar reasons. For like, how can we get together and how can we either help places support us so we can bring these performances to the right spaces, or how can we ensure that we get the kind of simple but specialist requirements that we need to do these types of performances safely.
And is that because you found
like a clean, quiet backstage piercing, you know?
And you don't get that at the moment, I'm assuming.
Sometimes, but it's also a lot of places aren't necessarily, they just don't understand. They don't understand the specifics. They, you know, you've got, this is the thing, when you're doing something that's extreme, you're doing something that other people have never seen or experienced before. So they don't know that actually, no, I can't get changed in a fucking toilet because I've got to put a needle in my veins, you know? And they're busy trying to run an entire event. So I guess it's about finding a way, for me, for the Extreme Performance Association, I feel like it's about trying to find a way to facilitate and ease that conversation between performers and bookers and venue managers, so that you're not having to do extra work managing your performance. Work that if there was better funding, you'd have a fucking show manager, like somebody who's a top tier circus performer. You know, like, you wouldn't be worrying about doing your aerial performance because you'd have somebody else organizing the rig and your requirements and so it's the equivalent of that, I guess.
Are you worried though that if you get all of those things, that then your form of work won't be economically viable anymore?
Yeah,
it's that kind of.
It's. I think you can get those things without it. You can get most of those things without it being not economically viable, but it is just problematic in that sometimes clients aren't realistic, and and they don't understand. And it's for me, it's about just kind of finding a way to be really clear that it's like this isn't a like you said with the chainsaw. This isn't a dangerous performance, but for me to be able to do this performance in a safe way, I have these simple requirements. So it's just kind of trying to ease that so that, you know, the more people are aware of that, then the less problems you have on the night.
Yeah, fair enough. And so how many people do you have in your group? How many people are out there doing the work, let's say, in London and the UK at the moment?
I don't know. I haven't counted the numbers recently because we were meant to have a meeting, and with all the shutdowns, obviously, no meetings.
It got coronafied.
Everything got coronafied. So the opposite happened. But I think last time we had a meeting, we had like somewhere between 15 and 20 people, and at the Live Art Development Agency. Online, we've got a lot more people. We've got I have like a bit of an international kind of group of people, which is nice because the problems people have in America are different to the problems we have here, etc., etc. And different people.
And also, as well, it's nice to have that culture across the street performers. Have that thing. We know each other because we travel about from all over the world.
It's a family.
One of the most disappointing things, I think, for a lot of us happening right now is the fact that we won't be seeing each other on the festival circuit, you know, in places like the Edinburgh Fringe and other places. Yeah. So I suppose you guys have got the same thing,
Yeah.
How the world changes, eh?
Yeah, and it's also with the kind of support space, it's also that legally, the legal requirements are different in different countries. So it's different things you're having to get around. in regards to kind of insurance and
Yeah.
whether you can bleed in certain spaces and things like that.
Yeah, fair enough. And if you are an international circuit of performers, then it makes sense that you are all skill sharing and skill swapping about
Definitely.
what's going on. Similar thing to packing your suitcase for going into a place, things you can send this way and not this way.
Yeah.
And we have a similar thing. So it's really
Right.
nice to see like all the industries have their little internal communities helping each other and supporting each other.
Yeah, I think, I don't know about you, but I kind of feel like it's a giving circle in a lot of ways. You know, you might not necessarily be giving directly back to somebody, but you kind of pass it on in one way or another, whether it's a wig or just a general kind of helping somebody with the show or
Well, that's the big thing, I think. And I wonder how you guys do it, because for us, a lot of us learn and really develop our work by sitting on pitch with other performers. And we watch those other performers. And we talk to them when they come off. We go, "Oh, you did this. This was interesting." They talk about why they did something, or they'll make a joke about it and defer, but it'll have some form of information in it. You know, there's a tutelage that's going on in those spaces. And do you have that in cabaret? I mean, I've done bits of cabaret, but very rarely, so I don't really know the world.
I think backstage is very important to us, and it is, by and large, really a community space in a really nice sense. And I think there's this, this myth that it's quite a bitchy kind of problematic space. And I think as long as you bring positive energy into the space, then I've only really encountered like nice things by and large.
I've heard the same, more or less, from near enough everyone who works in the cabaret thing, that you don't hear bad things from backstage. And I think it's because everyone knows you're not going to spook. You don't want to spook each other. You're going out there to try and make people happy.
And also just being practical. You don't shit where you eat. I'm not a big person, but like, if you're that way inclined, then do it with your friends.
But this is the thing. Like, how would you create a problem? You then have to deal with that problem, and then you have to carry the emotions of that problem onto the stage and do a good show.
Yeah, that's why
would you do that? Yeah, fuck that.
But yeah, you were talking about skill shares and learning.
Yeah.
I do think that there is because it's within a nightclub, there's slightly maybe a bit less time for having those conversations, but they are still had. And, even if it's extended into why don't you come and spin fire with me? Or, I just use these rhinestones, or whatever kind of little tips and shares. Or actually, I use, if you do know, if you score the base of your shoes, you won't slip on stage, or whatever, the little thing you kind of pass on. Or, hey, I love your makeup, but have you tried this brush? It will blend better, whatever,
Yeah.
And I've also, I've had people say to me, I have also taught people piercing skills for performances, and various other kind of like extreme body things.
And so what do you guys do? Do you do like skill trading? I'll teach you this, you teach me that, or you do this, I'll do that, and kind of a little inner market of skills? Or
I think there is definitely some of that in cabaret, but I also work with kind of art spaces and the Live Art Development Agency. Every year, YouTube runs a program called DIY Plus, which is really interesting and might be really interesting for some people who are watching at the moment. And they run free or partially funded, so artists run workshops or kind of experimental spaces for groups of people to kind of come together. So a couple of years ago, I ran a group with Cherie Rose and Rhiannon Aarons on body performance. So we were teaching people how to use pain practices. So that's like flogging, piercing, suturing. So that's stitching the skin. Suturing is stitching the skin.
Yeah. Treat me like an idiot. I know nothing. I'm vanilla.
And cutting, all in kind of safe and controlled ways, and had just a space where people could have discussions about, okay, well, I've been interested in doing this, but how could I do it in a safer way? Or what kind of venues would allow me to do this type of performance? So I've done a few things like that. I'm also Gershon Rocks, who are running events. Rocks is running. She's running a online course at the moment called The Art of the Pro, and I'll be running a talk on fetish on there next week. So
okay, cool. We can put a link to that in the comments after.
Yeah, if anybody's interested, that will be happening next week. So yeah, continuing to share and kind of like put more out there, I think is really important.
So with these crowds you're getting for the gigs, are they kind of a niche crowd? You see the same people that go around to the gigs, and they're kind of a little community, and they're people who know you, and they're kind of fans for the work. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's different from space to space, and I think sometimes I underestimate it because I don't usually. I think a lot of my costumes are quite intimidating. So if I do come out off stage in a costume, then I don't have a lot of people coming up to me. I'm not like a pretty approachable showgirl in like I'm this dark creature that looks a bit weird. And
yes, and I suppose the performance isn't something that's meant to make people feel comfortable throughout all of it. You know, it's not.
So it's not until kind of like afterwards that I see people going, oh my god, I've wanted to see your performances for ages, or I really like your performances, and I, you know, like finding little reviews or people commenting on events, or you know, just things getting passed on. And I did a digital performance on Monday for a club called Ray, and it was really nice actually kind of being able to see this chat box going down and seeing people going, oh my god, I can't believe that happened. Oh wow, you're so bendy. Oh wow, you know, like all this kind of stuff. I was literally crying, like things that conversations between audiences that I can't hear when I'm at a nightclub.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, as a street performer, God, we miss the attention. Like, you know, I'm saying hello to people out of my window as they walk past, you know, just desperate for human contact. It's an interesting thing, I suppose, right now. We've been used to, as performers, going out in front of crowds of people and getting kind of adoration, you know, getting love.
Yeah.
And building or being part of the gathering of people together, a specific thing that we can't do now. It's the worst thing to do.
Yeah, especially you with your specific, you know, with street theatre, having that specific art of gathering a crowd. That's
yes.
Like,
yeah, I've trained in the exact thing
you shouldn't do.
Yeah, but we're kind of moving into a different way of doing things for now. Kind of I think the communities are staying on some kind of live support in some way. It seems everyone's plugged in, and you know the monitor's going boop 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 on the community. The community's still alive, waiting for this lockdown to drop. To get back in action. I've seen some people talking about festivals being prepped and being made ready, just with loads of staff basically committing stuff to it and saying, when this is dropped, we will immediately do this.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you know people who are doing that? Is that something you're up for doing?
Yeah, I have heard of people kind of running a, you know, like, you know, later fest or whatever they're going to call it. Yeah. Tomorrowland, I don't know what. I know that's a festival.
Yes. Well, there'll be some aspirational name tied to it, I'm sure.
Yeah. Futureland, we'll call it Futureland.
Yeah. Freedom.
Yeah.
Freedom Festival.
Freedom Fest 2020. Yeah. I have had some people kind of and some people communities that I'm involved with putting forward ideas for things like that. But it is very hard. It is very hard not suddenly having an empty calendar, isn't it? And
well, my calendar was always empty, but it was always full at the same time because I could walk on the street. You know, it's like
I find it very disconcerting, kind of like suddenly being like, okay, well that's it. There's just nothing. Very disconcerting.
Yeah,
so it's like very nice to kind of create these opportunities to have interviews and
and chats and talking to people. Just reaching out and sharing. The thing that I've got from comments from people on the videos is saying that it's re-inspired them when they felt down, being able to reach out and see people who are in the same position, who are still trying to percolate things and work things out and see what we can do to keep knowledge and community together in these times.
Definitely. I'm doing like a lot of trying to be quite conscientious about my mental health, but I'm also kind of trying to craft a bit, and little things like that that are, you know, I think it's trying to balance this thing between we're being told by, there we are, trying to balance this thing between kind of forcing yourself into a space of productivity that isn't important anymore, and then forcing or lapsing into total inertia, and finding that healthy space in between that isn't forced productivity or unhealthy obsession with productivity, but still isn't kind of giving in to nothingness. Or,
well, I've kind of gone through all of them in the last 2 weeks, intermittently.
I've been doing them in the last 4 hours, babe.
Yeah. I started doing the interview thing, and then I was like, right, you know, I'm going to do this. It was good to begin with, maybe feel quite leveled, something to put my energy into. Then, like later on in the week, I'm checking comments at least about 4 or 5 times a day, 6, 7 times a day, religiously, making sure I can keep up. Checking how many people have viewed this thing. I was like, oh God, I've arranged interviews now for every day the next week instead of every other day.
Yeah.
And I just thought I've just become obsessed with doing this now. You know, it's become this, and you know, and then there was a thing which I think we talked about before we went online, where you have this what's the word I'm looking for? Monetization panic. You're like, Christ, I'm running out of fucking money. How can I make money? I used to make money performing. This is kind of like performing, but not performing.
Shut down. It's so surreal. I know that everybody else, I know that most other industries are having the same experience, or a kind of a castration, at least if it's not entirely gone.
Yeah, and I get it. Like, you know, I understand.
We were the first to go, and we're the least stable. We don't have a paycheck.
No, but I'll be honest, in terms of if we're going to think about big society, we, not me, and that kind of thing, I get it. You know, I do get it.
I get it.
What are we doing? If people need to live and die for the next 3 months, what are we doing? Funny, ha ha ha. Like, you know, that's done far better over a little screen by people regularly. In all honesty, a lot of the fucking time. So it's not like it's the end of the world for us to stop for 3 months.
I think as long as we're getting the financial support that we need to kind of keep going through the government sector, you know, obviously we don't want anybody being left in a sticky situation where there's no money coming in, which is unfair. So, we're doing our best with, you know, the options we've been given by the government, which aren't great, but they're better than nothing.
Yes, yeah, I agree. I mean, I signed on for the first time in it's 18 years, probably nearly 18 years, I think. Yeah. And admittedly, it's I've been lucky. You know, I did get a call a couple of days ago. I've had money go in the bank, and I know when it's coming in again. And it's a massive fucking relief. I know many people aren't in the situation I am. Just to very quickly say, if you are, what I did was I went on the journal. I complained on the journal, you know, lightly, just turned around saying, look, I've got this much money left in the bank, gave the figure amount that I had. Instead of getting worried, can you please help? Can you please help me sort out an appointment, need an appointment? Just keep sending messages, and then keep by your phone. They'll call you at some point. There's $500,000. Just a quick thing about creativity, about creative process. If you were given all the money in the world and you could create any kind of project, what would you do?
I think all the money in the world is. I think it's stuff that I would need more than 5 minutes to think up like what I could make that. But I guess I have a pet project that I've been waiting to make, which needs funding and a suitable space. And
are you willing to give any details, or you keep it tightly to your chest?
I'll give you a little teaser before somebody else, you know, some young buck comes and nicks my art concept, and I'm like, bitch. Hell no, that would be sore. So yeah, I have an art piece that I've been kind of sending around as a proposal for a while now, which is inspired off of the kind of the femicide of the witch trials and the witch hunts and burnings. And it's quite a big, challenging performance piece that would require kind of me spending months creating this garment that would be a memorial for the people who were lost, and through these witch hunts. It would also be looking at witch hunts as a greater concept, kind of like, also kind of, Victoria Climbié was the child who was killed because they're through child abuse because their family believed they were a witch. So not just in the medieval sense, but also kind of in a modern sense.
This thing lingers today.
Yeah, it's an ongoing problem, and anyway, so that but
it's quite interesting, even with that. So you have just to dissect that a little bit. You have the performance of it, which is the thing in and of itself, but then you have the artifact that's left from it, which is this costume that you're creating.
Well, it wouldn't be an artifact because performance involves the destruction of the artifacts. So that's kind of the part of the kind of like that's part of what excites me about that piece. Like, I need a pyro team, so I need some good money.
Are you gonna look to sell anything after? I mean, I remember I did a fine art degree many years ago. When I say I did infrequently, went to it and then drank through most of it and then gave up because I realised it wasn't what I was looking for fairly quickly. Right. For various reasons that I'll go into another time, or maybe later on if you have time. Right? I've lost my train of thought. Smoking and drinking at interview.
Yeah, I can't remember. You were talking about selling pieces after a
yes. So you've got this thing with Banksy destroying the piece of artwork, then the piece of artwork in itself through the moment of its destruction becoming worth more because it's got this performative aspect to it through the sale and through that kind of thing. And so when I heard this, I remembered when I was in uni, they told me about an artist who was tattooing people and then taking pictures of the tattoos and then the tattoos with the artifice, and they were trying to drill into you this idea of creating a product.
Okay, can I tell you the opposite art piece?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know about Ule's piece?
No, I don't. But please carry on and maybe explain who Ule is a little bit. Give a bit of context.
Okay, so Ule, sadly, he passed away. Who was I believe a Dutch artist. I could be entirely wrong. I've just lost my entire art career here. So Ule is one of the huge four-founders of performance art, and he sadly passed away recently. And he did a lot of performance art with Marina Abramovic, who was her partner. So they were collaborating on performances throughout their relationship. And I believe before he was performing with Marina, he had this piece when he got tattooed when he was living in Amsterdam, and had the tattoo removed. He specifically had a tattoo put on his skin so that he could have the skin removed and then preserved.
Stretched, yeah.
Yeah. So the art piece existed on his skin temporarily, and then the body in the gallery.
And I assume he tried to sell this piece after. This was aimed to be sold on the market as a...
I don't like... I think Ule comes from more of a conceptual background, so it's I don't know quite at the time whether he was in the space that he was in more recent years, where you could sell pieces for good money, but definitely I'm sure it has been sold and paid well for by now.
And that's one of the interesting things about, you see, the modern art kind of world, and this is me trying to talk bullshit about what I understand little of really in some way, but you see the young British artists and this thing, that kind of arcs back to Duchamp about spectacle, and the artwork is about the spectacle that's attached to the creation of the artwork or the presentation of the artwork. Yeah. And I just find that quite an interesting thing, its implications it's had with the modern era. You don't see artwork necessarily have as much craft as put into the work itself, and the identity and the stories and the manifest things around it.
Yeah. I mean, I was at Central St. Martin's, so I definitely saw a lot of that more concept-based stuff that was, not all of it, but there was definitely a lot of students who are more concept-driven and not necessarily as skill-driven. I'm not saying as me, I'm not saying that I'm not a technical painter, I'm not a realistic painter, I'm not a amazingly skilled sculptor. I have a specific performance niche that I do, and there are
And that you've
skills
developed.
I need. Yeah, obviously, somehow, isn't it a funny thing when you've been doing this for long enough, for like years and years, that you eventually get to a point where you're like when I was trying to film this performance last week for video, and my house, I was like, oh no, I don't like this. This looks crap. I don't want this video as a representation of my work. Oh, and my housemate was like, the performance was good, and I was like, yes. But I know the performance was good. That's not the point. The point wasn't that the performance was crap. The point was that trying to video this in my fucking lounge and make it look like a quality. When something is designed, when you are a skilled performer, but you are I could do that show on a stage, and it would be amazing. I do the same show in my lounge. It's not going to look so good, is it?
But do you know how I can empathize with you? If I see any street show by anybody on a camera in the film format,
yeah,
it makes me go, ugh. Especially people that I've seen live that I enjoy.
Yeah, I can.
And it's just, the thing is, there's a certain amount of tension, and there's a certain amount of nervousness and wonder, and there's a group think that's developed in a street show that isn't conveyed on camera. You're watching the aesthetic, and you're kind of looking at what's being said by the person, and you're looking at the way they're moving, but you don't get the nervousness of what's going to happen now. What is this guy that
entirely?
It's such an ephemeral thing. It's even hard to describe.
This is it. I had like lighting, location, crowd, tension, MCs, all of these things create a context for a performance, which is totally, at the moment, it's this thing of, do you create, if you have the opportunity, do you create performance for a digital format, or do you say, maybe you don't, maybe you say, no, my performance isn't designed for digital format, and I won't do that because it's not representative. So it's this
you just become like a bear and hunker down in a sort of cave and go, I will come back when the storm is over.
But yeah, it's that hard balance of like trying to create, eventually I got a friend edited the video a bit, and it felt better, and I had really great responses. So it's also that thing of kind of like, one, you're used to your performance being seen in a certain way. So when you suddenly have to do it as a live link or as a pre-recorded video, it's a different skill set. Suddenly, instead of being asked to just stand up and go, hi, I'm me and I'm going to do this thing, suddenly you're having to be a videographer, a location scout, a set dresser, an editor, all these things. And that's not really what we're used to being paid to do.
Yeah, I mean, I get you again. I'm used to talking shit to strangers. There's a certain amount of tension you can build and responses and techniques you build up for dealing with crowds of people.
Yeah,
they're the things I enjoy doing. They're the things I've developed doing, and you get none of those cues online. You're not getting any. The responses come in 30 seconds after. Thank you for all the comments, everybody. And so you're kind of on the back queue for that. You've got this number of people moving up and down slowly through time. You're not getting any of the smiles, any of the things that you can bounce through and judge. I'm used to judging human responses. Body language, look on people's faces, just knowing by the bullshit that you're not supposed to use, the prejudicial kind of bullshit of just looking at a human being and thinking, what do I believe you are? Which is what we do, as a natural response. It's something you've honed in a show to be able to either infer or, kind of make a brief snap judgment. And you have none of it. Absolutely none of it.
It's strange to be kind of, to lose your platform. That's kind of essentially where we're having to feel about and find our platforms at the moment. And stretch out our fingers, I suppose, into new places. I saw a really interesting. So I've seen some great live stream performances on Instagram, and I saw it amazing. My favorite performance I've seen since lockdown. That's a good question. Okay, you can have that to give to people from now on. So my friend Ron Athey was involved in a performance called Opera Povera last night, and it was as part of the Pink Full Moon, designed to happen then. and it was hundreds of performers coming together to create a performance on Zoom. It's still available on YouTube, and it's not everybody is operatically trained. It's not specifically musicians, but coming together to create this performance of this kind of wild, surreal soundscape, and just lying there with my headphones on, looking at the moon and thinking, my friends in LA and Sydney are watching this at the same time, and I'm looking up at the moon, and maybe they are too. What a unifying and exciting experience.
Yeah, I've had not the same kind of experience yet. I'm kind of the old fuddy-duddy on the internet as I am in normal life. There's big gatherings. I'm like, oh no, there's too many screens. I don't want to be involved in that.
Oh, that's me at most gatherings. But now, Grandma Goth now has to kind of like digitalize herself.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, this is my limited attempts to reach out is I'm kind of having phone conversations that other people can watch.
Yeah, Yeah. No, it works well.
That's my granddad way of trying to use a medium in an inefficient bullshit kind of manner.
Definitely.
So, I mean, I think we've had a good chat. We've done some time.
Yeah.
I think if we reach a natural time, if you want to stick around, when we do close the broadcast, I'll still be there for a second just to say goodbye to everything else.
Yeah.
Would you like to say goodbye to everyone out there?
Yeah.
Last questions?
Any questions from the floor?
So as we get the comments right now, we've got, I'm practicing meat hooks, surviving, body language.
Yeah, I think that I saw those popping up as we were chatting.
Yeah, I think they're archaic in terms of the timing we need.
That was body languages was about what you could and couldn't have. Now we don't have stages, so
yes.
Okay, it's been very nice having this chat.
The same.
Yeah. I hope your boat is nice and cozy at the moment.
It's cozy for now. It should be. I'm pretty sorted, to be honest. As soon as the credit came in, I was like £100 a week, which before would have seemed like a pittance to live on, was like I feel like I'm Scrooge McDuck now. I'm jumping around in money.
Your money pool.
Yeah, I hope yours gets sorted out really, really, really soon, mate. Yeah.
And this video to my universal credit lady.
Yeah, so I suppose if anyone wants to support Amy, I'm sure you've got a PayPal. We can put it in the comments at the end of the video. Feel free to go and drop there if you want to support me. There's some other stuff, but no, focus on Amy. I've got my credit through. She has not yet. I feel a lot more relaxed in terms of monetization now. I know the state's going to at least be feeding me in the interim.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the state to acknowledge my existence. That will happen eventually. We all?
May the hand drop from the sky and pass you the £90 a week that will help you survive.
We need to be knighted.
Lovely chatting. Let's do it again. Everyone, goodbye, 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 goodbye.